On the western shores of Lake Winnipesaukee lies a charming New Hampshire town called Meredith, a town that for the last 150 years has been home to one of New Hampshire's most peculiar mysteries, an out-of-place artifact that has left historians, geologists, and archaeologists with more questions than answers. On this episode of Weirder After Dark, we'll be unraveling the mysteries of the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone. Welcome back to Weirder After Dark, the podcast where we get into all things New England strange. My name is Sean, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I am Chris.
And I'm Kathy.
And we have a episode today for you that is about a rock.
Yeah, it's a cool rock, though.
It's a really cool rock.
It's a cool rock.
But before we dive into that, we've got something really, really awesome also going on this weekend. What are we doing, guys?
We're going to go to the library.
We're going to the library. That's right. We actually have been invited by a listener, so you know who you are. Shout out to go to the local Manchester, New Hampshire library. And we are actually going to be seeing a presentation put on by Ronnie LeBlanc, who's really cool. He's on the Discovery Channel on Expedition Bigfoot, and he's going to be talking about Bigfoot and the UFO connection.
I'm actually excited about that.
Yeah.
I got questions. I hope he has time for questions.
Yeah.
Aliens and Bigfoot, like,
Together.
Bring it together for me,
It's
please.
a dream.
Yeah, and every time I ever see anything on TV about Bigfoot, it's always about, like, they're, like, in Louisiana, Alabama. They're, like, way down south, right?
Or the Northwest.
Yeah,
There's
the
tons of
Northwest, yeah.
Northwest. Yeah.
Okay.
We actually have a Bigfoot adjacent story come down the pipeline on the Kewaskum County Wood Devils in northern New Hampshire. So
Nice.
y'all be on the lookout for that. So hopefully Ronnie might know a thing or two that he can teach us to prepare us for that episode. So really looking forward to that.
Are we going to get to try to go Bigfoot hunting?
I did this morning. What are you talking about?
Like,
Yeah.
we're going to pencil that in, right?
Oh,
I took the day off from work.
Yeah. I'm just going to see Chris doing wood knocks to work. Like, I can't wait for this. Well, the story that I'm going to tell and share with you two here today is actually a story that's based out of central New Hampshire and revolves around an artifact that is known as the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone. This stone was discovered 150 years ago, back in 1872, and it was discovered off the western shores of Lake Winnipesaukee in Meredith, New Hampshire. Over the last 150 years since the discovery of the Mystery Stone, as I'll be referring to it through the rest of the podcast, this Mystery Stone has puzzled archaeologists, geologists, historians, everyone. It is so unique and is so unlike anything else that has ever been discovered, not just in New Hampshire, but in the world. So much so that when archaeologists are looking at this, they're referring to it as what they call an OPART, an out-of-place artifact. They're still trying to answer some of the most basic questions about this stone. Questions like, who made it? Was it a natural artifact, or is it some larger hoax? Was it made from the natives that were inside of New Hampshire, or was it potentially brought here by someone else? All of these questions, to this day, still a mystery. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to tell you the story, the complete history of the stone. We're going to talk about it in depth. And I want you two and our listeners to go ahead and walk away with your own opinion on, what is this?
I've worked in Laconia, which is right on Lake Winnipesaukee as well as Meredith, and I have never heard of this. So this is all brand new.
Fun fact, Laconia is going to be making a little appearance inside this episode. So Watch out.
I just want to let you both know, when I see somebody in a bar that's a little bit too old for that bar, they are now an OBART. An out-of-place artifact.
I love that. Digging it. All right. Well, in order for us and our listeners to go ahead and make a judgment on the Mystery Stone's authenticity, I think what we have to do is not only learn a little bit of the history of the artifact itself, but the history of the individual that found it, as well as the town of where it's found. To kick this off, we're going to actually dig into the founder of the stone, or who was credited with it, whose name is Seneca A. Ladd. Seneca Augustus Ladd was actually born on April 29th, 1819 in Loudon, New Hampshire, to his two parents, his father Gideon Ladd and his mother Polly Osgood. Gideon, Seneca's father, was a carriage builder and was supposedly known for, quote, his brain power, sobriety, and sedate manners and stern demeanor.
A serious dude.
Serious dude, right? And these are qualities that apparently, as I was read, was admired by his children and can be seen in Seneca's character as well. Can you imagine being like, what do you admire about your dad? Well, his sobriety. Like,
my dad never touched alcohol. He's completely sober.
There's not actually a lot of information available about Polly Osgood, Seneca's mom, but Gideon and Polly had a total of 12 children, Seneca of which was the fourth son and one of 6 total boys. So I want to pause here real quick. Can you imagine early 1800s, as hard as life is, 12 little children running around?
Was that normal?
Yeah. That was a lot
That's
more
normal.
normal. Rationale probably being is a lot of kids weren't making it very long because,
dying.
That most people,
death. Yeah.
most people farmed back then,
Yeah.
so it was free labor.
Yeah. Continuing on. As a child, Seneca's approach to execution and his thought process were described as being unique and unlike anything else. He attended the Loudon Town School seasonally until he was 17, but did not really seem to enjoy the schooling. Really wasn't for him. In fact, in Seneca's own words, he described school as school books and rules were a hard task for me. And to obtain knowledge in that way was much like trying to take on fat by eating sawdust.
Okay.
His own words.
That sounds miserable.
Yeah, so it's fair to say that he wasn't a fan. Not a big school guy.
So far, I like this guy.
Yeah, right. Despite not being drawn to traditional learning methods, Seneca found success when he ran into and worked with a teacher named John L. French. John allowed Seneca to pursue his own learning methods. What that means was he allowed Seneca to look at learning and approach it however he wanted to. Mr. French only stepped in to provide general course direction. So it sounds like although he wasn't really liking the traditional style of learning, he was able to be successful if he was allowed to kind of approach the work and the learning how he wanted to.
It sounds a lot like modern day charter schools.
Yeah, like
Same
Montessori.
approach.
Yeah. Although Seneca didn't excel in traditional schooling methods, his drive, work ethic, and ability to learn through experience allowed him to thrive outside of the school. So he continued doing the seasonal schooling until he was the age of 13. At 13, he acquired an apprenticeship with a carriage maker in Raymond, New Hampshire, and did that outside of the months that he was not inside of schooling in Loudon. He spent the next 4 years learning how to build carriages at the age of 13. Chris, Kathy, what were you doing at the age of 13? Were you building carriages?
I was not building carriages. No.
I can honestly say that I did not have that much drive.
Yeah, right. Now, I know these are different times, but I know when I was 13, I was like in my backyard with a stick, pretending it was a gun, killing zombies that were fake. I was not in an apprenticeship building carriages, so Seneca and I are built different, is all I want to say. In 1836, at the age of 17, Seneca left home and moved to Meredith, New Hampshire. He there scored a job with a carriage maker. He was able to utilize that 4 years of talent from that apprenticeship that he just had, and the carriage maker's name was John Haynes. And for the following 2 years, he refined his skills. These skills would become immensely important in just a few years to come for Seneca Lad. After the 2 years of working under John Haynes and refining his skills building carriages, Seneca actually left the small town and aimed his sights on something much bigger. Boston, Massachusetts. Our guys out there chasing the lights, chasing the dreams. He was brought to Massachusetts and to Boston because his brother Albert had been employed by Timothy Gilbert's piano factory. Have you guys heard of Timothy Gilbert Piano Factory?
I have not.
I haven't actually heard of this either, but supposedly this was actually the second piano factory manufacturer ever opened up inside the United States and was world renowned for their piano. So he scored this like pretty nice gig going ahead working inside this company. Albert recruited Seneca to work at the Timothy Gilbert Piano Factory, but Seneca only lasted 6 months. And like all experiences in Seneca's life, though, his time in Boston, albeit very short, allowed him to learn some important lessons that he was going to use later in his life to get what? Cha-ching. Profits. This man is going to use this 6 months of experience to cash in a few minutes. So we're going to be coming back to that. Couldn't find any research that said why Seneca specifically left Boston and only lasted 6 months, but he did return back to Meredith. And this move back was the last time he would ever leave Meredith permanently going forward. So we are right now roughly at the age of 19. We have Seneca A lad back in Meredith to where he's going to be staying for more than the next 70 years, where he's going to turn himself into a successful entrepreneur, a philanthropist, an amateur archaeologist, a husband, and a father.
Now, I've commuted to Boston, so I'm going to vote probably the traffic. Shit ton of carriages. It was a mess.
Yeah. It was the little kind of hints I did get kind of pointed back to like he just wasn't loving the city life.
I was going to say, like, what did Boston do to him that made him move back and then never leave Meredith ever again?
Yeah. We're going to get into some Meredith town stats from this time period in a little bit, and we're going to see like it's not like Meredith be popping.
Yeah.
Okay, like, there's like a couple hundred people. It's mostly farmers, and he ends up helping build it to be something bigger and better and beautiful. In 1839, Seneca actually ended up buying an old sawmill and converted it into a large carriage manufacturer. This began his first business in what is going to be a long career of successful entrepreneurship. After Seneca opened the carriage manufacturing business, he actually ended up doing it with some of his own money and skill, but he needed some backers. Seneca at this point is 21 years old, doesn't have all the financials needed to actually do this conversion, but these are individuals that he met during his time previously with John Haynes and Meredith. I think this is like an important thing to point out because he's 19 years old, refining his skills, building carriages. He was able to establish enough faith into a number of other individuals that he could run a business, that he could create something at that age. And then when he came back just 2 years later at 21, they're like, we're giving you our money. We're going into business with you. You're going to open something up. I think if we just think about that, I think that says something about him, even at a young age, right? This is someone who wasn't successful in traditionary schooling, but still had the social skills to convince people that he was going to be able to do something successful.
Yeah, no, he'd definitely be in sales today.
One of the resources that I used to get all this information and do all this research was actually from the Meredith Historical Society. They actually had a event that they put on, I think it was back in 2019. I came across a really interesting story that they shared. It was mentioned that Seneca A lad working at his carriage manufacturing business, any time that this business would have 5 to 10 carriages produced, Seneca would string all 5-10 carriages up, and he himself would walk the carriages and pull them from town to town until every single one of those carriages were sold. And he would not return to the town of Meredith until they were all gone and all the money was made from profits. So I think that was, again, just building up the last story, like what an interesting character this guy is, right? And
Yeah.
Chris, you called out earlier, like, wow, this guy was clearly a salesman.
Yep.
Hell yeah, he was, right? This guy's just like stringing up carriages, walking down the road like that, like who's Stefan from Beauty and the Beast? And going ahead and just selling these carriages, right? Like crazy. I thought that was nuts.
Yeah, pretty driven guy.
Yeah, yeah. And you still got to think he's still young, right?
Yeah.
Like he's 21, 22, owns a business, selling these carriages, getting people to invest in him. And I'm 33 and still don't know what the fuck I'm doing with my life. After he started selling all these carriages, this actually marked the beginning of an extremely prosperous 11-year period for Seneca. This 11-year period in which the carriage manufacturing business achieved incredible success. Within just 1 year of opening up this business, Seneca was actually able to purchase his first home. Another fun fact here. He didn't pay cash. Any guesses to what he paid?
Carriage.
He paid in carriages. He did. He paid 1/5 of the cost of the house in carriages every year for the following 5 years. Interesting fact about carriage manufacturing business I found out. They can only really power these factories when they have the winter runoff from all the melting of the snow. So the majority of the manufacturing actually occurred in spring when the water runoff was happening. So he's doing the majority of this building, him and his company, within the first several months of the year is where they're building it all. And then they're spending the rest of the year walking around, apparently selling them. So I'm sure there was still more being built through the year, but vast majority was in the spring every single year.
So he'd cut all the wood first thing in the spring and then probably manufacture the carriages and then go out and sell for 6 months out of the year.
The next couple of years not only led to financial success, but also a number of personal milestones. In 1940, Seneca married Susan Tilton, an esteemed woman in the community and a lady of faith. Seneca was not a man of faith. There's actually a story that I read about Seneca at a young age where he ended up going to some churches when he found out that he had to drink wine in order to celebrate the church's success. He left because he wanted nothing to do with alcohol. In fact, Seneca A lad supposedly never smoked tobacco and never drank in his entire life.
That seems odd because I feel like back then everyone's smoking, everyone's drinking.
Yeah.
And they're just like, it's not a big deal.
Especially in these cold ass winters, right? Yeah. What do? You're in the harsh New England weather. You're in the 1800s. Like, you don't got Netflix. You can't Netflix and chill. Like, what else are you doing with your time? Seneca's journey was a smooth path until the late 1840s when he encountered a number of major setbacks in his life. I'm going to go through these rather fast here, okay? In 1847, his key business partner who helped open the carriage manufacturing business, a gentleman by the name Sewall Smith, died. In 1848, the next year, his father Gideon died. 2 years later, his brand new wife Susan died. In 1850, the same year his wife died, his carriage factory burned to the ground.
Oh, no.
And it was commented that it most likely was not even insured. So even though insurance existed back then,
He didn't have it.
out of luck probably. But if that wasn't enough, he was a brand new father. And in 1851, his son Charles also died.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah. So all of that between the ages of 28 and 32. So what started as an early life of amazing success quickly turned into a number of huge setbacks for this guy.
I mean, that's got to have some psychological effects on a man
Yeah.
to go from everything's going great to really 5 years of misfortune and just heartache.
Yeah, it was a lot. I can't imagine what that must have been like to go through that. But what could probably knock down a number of the best and hardest built men? Not Seneca. Within a year after the burning down of the carriage manufactory, he leased the idle Meredith cotton factory and created a successful, what kind of business? Any guesses?
I'm going to say brothel.
Weed dispensary.
Oh, okay, Chris, I like that. You're just like, he didn't drink alcohol, he didn't smoke tobacco, he's doing the weeds.
Doing the gummies.
He's doing the devil's lettuce. I like how your weed and brothels are our guesses. You know the quality of the humans I'm sitting at the table with. It actually was neither of those. It was a successful piano and melodeon business. In callback, you might remember he went down to Boston, worked with his brother at the piano business. His brother was actually, at this point in time, known as a world-renowned piano builder himself. So him and his brother Albert went into business together and was extreme success again. Sadly, though, after a couple of years running this extremely successful business,
Oh, no.
His brother died.
It burnt down.
It burnt down. This factory also burned down as well. The cod mill that housed the piano business burned in 1859, and Seneca decided to officially leave the manufacturing business and to pursue something else.
Poor Seneca.
Yeah, poor Seneca. No luck here.
Did his brother die too?
I don't believe his brother
Okay,
died
good.
here. So yeah, I
Well,
guess he's off the hook a little bit there. Even with these continuous setbacks, Seneca made a lot of money during these years with the piano and melodeon business. In fact, the melodeon, not the piano, ended up being his most profitable piece of equipment. Now, do either of you know what a melodeon is?
I was going to ask. I have no idea what that is.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them. They're like a piano, only they make a little bit of a different tone.
From what I read, they're just smaller, lighter, easier to play, easier to put around, easier to fit into your house. That is
So it's not like a
ultimately-
grand piano.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, much
Right.
smaller version of it. And that's what really took off and how the business ended up making all its money, which I thought was, again, really, really interesting. Seneca's entrepreneurial spirit led him to be one of the co-founders of a unique venture that combined philanthropy and business together. He co-founded the Meredith Mechanic Association, what I'm going to refer to as the MMA for the rest of this episode here, okay?
You mean like cage fighting? Sean?
No, not that MMA.
Oh, okay.
Not that MMA. That's a good call out. Once too many buildings burned down, he's just cage matches. Yeah. Unfortunately, a little less interesting than cage matches. But the Meredith Mechanic Association was a group of local investors dedicated to attracting new business to Meredith. Later on, Seneca ventured into a completely new field as well as the MMA by creating his most noteworthy business to date, the Meredith Village Savings Bank, which I don't know if you all have seen this. We're all from New Hampshire, but this bank still operates to this day and is a testament to Seneca A. Ladd's success as a business person.
Huh.
And
Wow.
it's super interesting because you can think of all the different financial crises that have happened since, the 1850s, 60s when this was opened
Great
up, right?
Depression, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
right.
still in
And
business.
it's still in business to this day. And they actually credit a lot of the success of the Meredith Savings Bank is just from like the core value principles that Seneca A. Ladd opened it and started it with, which was being very, very financially conservative. And they credit that for why it's been able to last so long.
Seems like an overachiever to me.
No, again, talking about this man's character
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
calling him out on a hoax, I'm already starting to see why we might have issues with that.
Yeah. We're learning a lot about like who he is as a person. I'm going to have some fun quotes to share with you about people saying about his character in a second. Meredith Village Savings Bank carries Seneca Ladd's legacy, but I'm going to suggest that the Meredith Mechanic Association may also play a really interesting part in answering some of the questions of the Mystery Stone. And the reason I think that is that the role that the Meredith Mechanic Association is playing is to try to bring outside businesses and new money into town.
They're trying to put Meredith on the map.
Yeah.
Making it a central hub for businesses. And
Exactly. In fact, on that point, in 1859, while Seneca Ladd was serving as part of the MMA, but not playing an extremely large role yet, the MMA purchased what is known as Mill Lot, that still exists in Meredith today, and invested in expanding the capabilities of the water power in Meredith that was derived by a guy named John Bon Swayze's canal.
now I've actually been to that mill building.
Oh, really?
It's right now it's a restaurant and a bunch of shops.
I was going to say,
Yeah, you've been there too. I think
they still
there's,
have the water wheel.
Yeah, they have the
Outside
water
of it.
wheel outside. It's a
Across
really
from the
neat
lake.
place.
Yeah, this group, this association is what built that. Now, what this canal did is this opened up tremendous water power that allowed more businesses to come in and take advantage of this new power that was being generated. And this ended up leading to the greatest era of success. So as you can see, huge investments made a really big difference. At this point of the story, we're in the late 1860s and just a few years away from Seneca discovering the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone. So I want to take a few moments to talk a little bit about the town of Meredith before we really start digging into the stone itself. During the late 1850s and 1860s, Meredith actually faced some significant financial setbacks. In 1855, the township of Laconia was formed, which separated a large portion of Meredith's land. The separation led to a decrease in the Meredith population from an estimated 3,521 to about 2,000 people, almost drastically cutting their population in half. So think of like what that does to a town if all of a sudden half of your resources, your manpower and womanpower just disappear overnight. That was a pretty large setback for the town of Meredith. During the Civil War, men from Meredith formed the 12th New Hampshire Volunteer Infantry Regiment. 45% of the town's male voters served inside of the Union Army, and many were killed or wounded. The war left the town in massive debt, which the town kept under wraps until 1871. In 1871, just 1 year before the Mystery Stone was discovered, it became public just how dire the town's finances were. Interesting timing. Not suggesting anything quite yet, but town comes out and says, wow, we're in really big financial problems. Year later, Mystery Stone found. Now, again, coincidence definitely could be. In 1870, Seneca A. Ladd served as the treasurer of the MMA, the Meredith Mechanic Association. He acted in that role as the modern-day CEO or president, where he played a crucial role in attracting businesses to the town. And it became his responsibility to lead this very task. Despite this, he continued to manage his cornerstone company, the Meredith Village Savings Bank, at the same time. So he's currently right now kind of playing this dual thing, running his Meredith Savings Bank and being kind of the president CEO of attracting businesses and people to come into the town of Meredith to make this town more financially successful. All of this brings us to 1872, the year the Mystery Stone was discovered. The exact date of the discovery seems to change a bit depending on which exact resource that you look into. But we're going to rely on the American Naturalist publication called The Remarkable Indian Relic by Daniel J. Tapley, which was published within the first 2 weeks of this discovery. In this article, Tapley speaks directly with Seneca Ladd. So that's why I'm going to rely on this to give us some of the facts. Tapley's article writes about the discovery. The stone was found at a depth of about 2 feet in the sandy drift at the head of the lake, where the ground apparently had not been disturbed for centuries. The location is at the point where Lake Waukegan, please don't kill me, people, I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. Waukegan. Yeah, where Lake where Lake Waukegan, also known as Measley Pond, originally emptied into Lake Winnipesaukee. If anyone does any of their own research, you might see it called Winnipesaukee. That was its more native name, but it is now well known as Lake Winnipesaukee, and that's what I'm going to continue referring to it as. The discovery was, no doubt, in an area that was a favorite fishing ground from primitive tribes that formerly inhabited that region. Now, that's a quote directly from Tapley, who's writing this. And natives haven't lived in the land in a very, very long time at this point. So interesting that he's like, this is clearly a favorite Indian fishing ground right here in this location.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering how he knew that. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I was also going to ask too, like, who determined that the ground had been undisturbed?
Yeah, this is probably coming from all of the first-hand reports of them being here. We're going to find a little bit more in a moment about why they were there, why they were digging. So more to come here in a second.
Okay.
Tapley continues. The water had been diverted from the channel and now flows through a canal, furnishing the remarkable water power of 40 feet perpendicular fall, which carries on the hosiery and other manufacturers here. About the 1st of June, Mr. Ladd was causing the digging of post holes for a fence when one of the laborers threw out what was apparently a lump of clay some 6 inches in thickness. The occurrence of such a body in this soil attracted Mr. Ladd's attention, and a slight examination revealed a section of the stone. Although this isn't technically reported by Tapley, other articles from the time stated that immediately after the discovery, Seneca took the object, rushed home alone, where he immediately started cleaning the artifact. So that wasn't in Tapley's reporting when it came out 2 weeks after, but other reports did suggest that.
That seems kind of shady.
I don't know. You find something, you're not sure what it is. I was like, I'm going to throw this in the back of my carriage and bring it home. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not exactly sure how I'd handle the discovery myself in the 1870s, right? Like, you find this thing that's really, really cool. Like, I don't know what I would do. But I do think it is noteworthy that there are no reports of seeing any type of writing on the stone from anyone before Seneca took the artifact home. There's literally zero description of what the stone itself looked like.
That's interesting because the report says it was covered in clay at the time, so nobody could actually see it other than Seneca.
Now, I can't leave out of the story that throughout Seneca Ladd's life, he did fancy himself a connoisseur of geology, local history, archaeology, and more. He is said to have had a vast collection of artifacts and books that he kept at his bank office, and he was always eager to show them off and talk about them. In fact, a quote from the history of Merrimack and Belknap counties from Reverend I.F. Hilton, who at the time was an eminent scientist and a strong personal friend of Seneca, describes Seneca and his bank with the following quote: "This gentleman of boundless curiosity and leisure is very hard of hearing." That's how it starts. Imagine having a great friend and the first thing you say about him is, yeah, that man is hard of hearing.
He's deaf as fuck.
No, that is a good friend because the first thing I do when I see you is make fun of you. Yeah, don't.
Thought that was so good. Like,
I got that banter.
I'm doing some research here. What do you know about Seneca? Well, that man, he's hard of hearing. Oh, that just killed me reading that. All right. So again, he says, this gentleman of boundless curiosity and leisure is very hard of hearing, a man of great reflection, remarkable observation, and unusual originality. The establishment looks like a professor's cabinet. There are no signs of a bank, externally or internally. Cases of books, minerals, coins, gems, and antiquities, a novelty printing press, a moderate safe, clay stones, and stone arrowheads of both the old world and the new world complete the establishment. So that's just describing what he's like.
Yeah.
So he's running this bank and it doesn't even look like a bank. He just like, you walk into this bank, it's just like artifacts. He's like, you want to learn about my artifacts? Like, I share that to be like, maybe that does kind of counteract, right? Like if he did find this random object, like he has all this stuff. He's seen it before. He might be thinking this is something really special and unique. And maybe that is why he was like, I don't want this to break. I want to bring this back. I want to make sure I'm taking the utmost care of this. This could be something huge. Merrimack and Belknap counties continues to say he is an honorary member of the New Hampshire Antiquarian Society, resident member of the New Hampshire Historical Society, member of the Pilgrim Society of Plymouth, Mass. So all this to say, this dude just histories, right? He's just like a history nut, right? He's into this stuff. With all that context, let's go back to the stone. We left off with Seneca taking the stone to his house and cleaning it off. Tapley's article continues, after careful cleaning process with water and brushes, the coating of the clay was removed and he was delighted to find himself in possession of as interesting an archaeological relic as yet found in New England. It is not to be wondered at that he takes pride in showing it and preserves it with the greatest of care. In describing the stone itself, this is how Tapley described it. And I want us to really take this in. Listen to this, right? This is our first physical descriptions of it. The stone is of an oval form, smoothly finished upon the surface, and of as perfect contour as if it was turned on a lathe. Its dimensions are 3 7/8 inches in length and 2 3/8 inches in thickness. The material is silicous sandstone and of a greenish clay drab color and fine grain. The sculptures are mostly in bas relief and a higher grade of art than usual in Indian workmanship. So Tapley himself at this moment is saying, ooh, this is like higher quality work than we're used to seeing from local Native American. Tapley continued, it's difficult to conceive that such work could be done without the aid of metal tools. A hole was drilled through the longest diameter, which tapered uniformly 3/8 of an inch at the larger end and 1/8 of an inch at the smaller. The use of which was probably the same as in the class of stones known as gorgets, to which we should refer it. Now, do either you know what a gorget is?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I'm picturing kind of like a lathe where you're turning a stone to carve it.
Ah, okay. So right now what Tapley is doing is he's referring to the hole and why the hole's there inside of it. And what he's suggesting is a gorget would be, it's a French word for like a necklace. So they're thinking maybe this stone, the hole was drilled to put onto a necklace and they wore it as some type of like Native American necklace or something like that to show it off. Though. Well, you got to keep in mind when we're looking at the description, it's only 3 7/8 inches in length, 2 3 inches in thickness. A lot of things that I read have described it as slightly larger than a goose egg.
Okay.
So, yeah. To paint a better verbal picture of the stone, I'm going to use the descriptions from the Merrimack and Belknap counties publication from 1885. It says, 10 figures, some in low relief, but sunk below the surface, are cut with a workmanship inferior to the gems of ancient Europe, but as much superior to any of those ever found on this continent. For instance, in the ear maze, 7/8 of an inch long, there were 17 kernels in the row, and 4 of the rows clearly visible, with 2 or more partly in sight. In a circle below, near the broad end of the Mystery Stone, is the sculpt of an animal with large ears, a deer's leg, and another figure like a 3-pointed cap. To the right is a face in an oval, 2 1/8 inches long and 5/8 broad. This resembles strongly ancient Egyptian countenance. The face is sunken as the nose does not rise above the regular surface. The next figure is an Indian lodge of 4 poles. They called it a teepee. Visible above where they cross at the top. 3 breadths of curtain are shown and they are carefully roughened. This is not on a depressed surface. Below this is a blank circle. There remains a series of 3 figures not in depressed surfaces. First, 4 spears or paddles arranged in a form suggestive of the letter M. a crescent, aka also looked like a moon, and under it, 2 maces in the shape of an X. Lastly, there is a circular figure around each end. One little flaw is seen in the edge of the depression from which the face is raised. The stone was so encrusted as to completely conceal all traces of the carving, and only a careful investigator would have discovered this little secret. This was all done by Seneca A. Lad, the Meredith philosopher and antiquarian, and whose obsession it is now. The stone has attracted the wonder of the scientific world, European savants having vainly tried to obtain it for themselves. If you had any trouble following that description, I'm just going to hit it to you like this. We have a goose egg-shaped artifact. It's as hard as stone, and it has a hole drilled through the vertical length of it. It has 10 unique etched markings onto it, which no one knows to this day what any of it means. I also want to be clear. The hole in the markings are believed not to be capable of being made by the Abenaki or the Pennacook Native Americans that lived in the area of New Hampshire, or made with tools that were even in use during that area. Nothing else like this, or even remotely like this, has ever been discovered since or before its 1872 discovery in New Hampshire. Before we get into some of the theories about what exactly this Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone is, I have Kathy and Chris right now. You just pulled up some images. And listeners, we're going to post that on our Instagram, Weirder After Dark. Feel free to go ahead and check them out yourselves. Now that you've heard a description, Kathy and Chris, and you've seen some of these images, what's your initial reaction to the etches?
It is an incredibly detailed, right? I mean, I couldn't imagine somebody making this without the use of not just modern tools, but electric tools. Just looking at it, this is something that you could carve.
Yeah. I see you zooming into the face right now, Chris, of the stone. And like, imagine that circle there, the nose, the eyes, and like using the current tools that the Abenaki and the Pennacook had, which would be like carving with other rocks and hard rocks and stuff like that. Like, that'd have to be incredibly difficult, right?
I also think that we seriously underestimate our ancient ancestors as well. I think they were much more capable than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
I mean, you find older and older artifacts and older technologies, and I think we have some of our chronology of the development of mankind a little bit earlier.
Yeah. There also could be some like lost secrets too, right? Like things that they knew that after their, civilizations and tribes were kind of wiped out, unfortunately, by the Europeans. Like maybe those lessons are lost to time into history, right? Kathy, what's your reaction looking at this?
It is definitely a piece of art. It's the detail is... It's kind of mind-blowing, especially like the image of what looks like the teepee. It's so small, but the image is so perfect.
Yeah. I find it interesting you call the teepee out. Interestingly enough, a lot of researchers, I don't think I actually write about this in the rest of the story, but it is an image of what people are calling a teepee and think look like a teepee. Well, the Abenaki and the Pennacook didn't actually live in teepees.
They didn't.
They lived in wigwams.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a frequent thing people call out, being like, that's weird.
Yeah, because teepees were more of the Midwest.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just the smoothness of the stone must have been an arduous process for anybody.
Yeah, how would you get the rocks so smooth and round?
Good questions. Really good questions. All right, well, let's continue on. Before we get into the theories of why is it here, who made it, is the stone native to New Hampshire, what was it used for, is it a natural artifact or a hoax, I want to talk about some facts that we do know about the stone, all right? So here's some actual things that we do know. We read about the dimensions and what it looked like, but there was some laboratory evidence and analysis of the stone, and I want to share those with you before we get into the theories. These conclusions were drawn from Eugene L. Boudettes, a former New Hampshire state geologist who did both a macroscopic and microscopic examination of the Mystery Stone on December 20th in 1994. His observations included the principal mineral appears to be of quartz. Because quartz is probably the dominant mineral, the rock could either be sandstone or quartzite. But due to the fine grains, high density, high degree of cementation, and smooth, hard finish, it is probably more likely quartzite of a type not recognizable of a New Hampshire rock. It could also be myelinite, a layered carboclastic rock formed by milling under high pressure and fault zones. All in all, although not a familiar rock type in the state of New Hampshire cannot be ruled out as the source of locality. His notes regarding the working of the stone, Eugene confirmed it was in fact turned on a lathe. So was able to confirm that. The carving was done after turning, and he was able to come to that conclusion as the nose does not rise above the surface of the ovid, and carving could have been done with either power or hand tools, including dental tools, using carbide or diamond tips or drill bits. Eugene's analysis confirms that it's most likely made of a rock type that isn't from New Hampshire, meaning it most likely, although not confirmed, was made outside of the state, or at least the rock was brought from somewhere else. The etchings were likely added after the egg shape was formed, and the etchings could have been made with hand tools or power tools using the right sharpness. However, tools that were most likely not used by the local natives. Whether real or hoax, Seneca A lad never profited or charged a single person to see the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone. Instead, he proudly showcased it and showed it off to anyone interested in viewing or studying it. And by all accounts, it lured in archaeologists, geologists, historians, both professional and amateur from all around the world. He stored the Mystery Stone as part of his vast collection of antiquities in his Meredith Village Savings Bank collection until he died on January 22nd, 1982 at 72 years old. In 1927, the Mystery Stone was donated to the New Hampshire Historical Society by Seneca's daughter, Frances Ladd Coe, and the stone remains there today where you can see it, and we will be seeing it in a couple days.
Now, I'm excited to see this thing in person.
It is pretty cool looking. But all of that leads up to, we can now get into some of the theories. If it was a artifact from the natives, there are several theories of what it could be. The first one, this one is from Tapley, again, the gentleman who was one of the first people to write an article about the finding of this stone. The stone commemorates a treaty between two tribes. The reversed arrows symbolize peace. The moon and stars symbolize the dates. The crossed arrows, a union of the two forces coming together. The wigwam, which he did write wigwam inside his writing, might indicate the place where the treaty was consummated. In the corn and other emblems, the feast by which it was commemorated. So Tapley suggesting maybe it's the artifacts are really just depicting like two tribes treaty coming together. Yeah. So that's one theory we have. Another theory I found from the New Hampshire Historical Society's website suggested that some think the stone, which was found near the shores of Lake Winnipesaukee, is some sort of water burial or water ritual burial, and some type of artifact around that. If this was the case, perhaps someone found it and then drilled the hole into it to then wear around as a necklace because they just thought it was a really cool find. And that's how the drilled portion of it ended up coming in. So that's an interesting theory out there. Others think that it was some type of tool used by the natives. It has been suggested that the hole drilled through the Mystery Stone was so that the stone could sit on some type of stick or some type of pole so it could be used as some sort of tool. Now, that one to me seems plausible maybe, but I want to keep in mind the size of it is like, like a goose egg, right? So it's not huge. Like what tool could that be used for?
And it seems like a lot of work to create all those details on a tool that you're going to be banging around. Potentially getting destroyed.
We have some more other Native American kind of ideas here. Gary Sanderson, who at the time was with the Greenville Recorder, a local newspaper, received correspondence. He actually did like a 4-part article on the Mystery Stone and his thoughts, and he talked to like a bunch of different historians and local people around New Hampshire. In his article, a person from Cape Cod, I believe it was, wrote a letter to him and suggested that it was a Native American birthing stone and that the stone was lubricated, heated up, and used to help Native mothers bring children into the world.
Where did the stone go, Sean?
Yeah, you know where the stone went, Chris. You know exactly. Yeah, right where you think it did, Chris. Yeah, you're there. But this particular writer suggested that there was a lot of science that was lost. They claimed that they were well aware that this was a normal practice that the local natives did. Others suggest that it could be a native stone from other tribes around the continental U.S., and it was brought to New Hampshire, where it was lost, buried, or part of some type of burial or something else.
I mean, these all really sound like they could actually work.
Yeah. I mean, they're all kind of plausible, right? Like you could be like, man, I guess I could kind of see that. Those are all the native-based theories. You want to get into some wilder ones? That are out there? In 1931, New Hampshire Historical Society, where we're going to go look at the stone in a couple days, they received a letter from Kenneth L. Roberts. Kenneth suggested that the Mystery Stone was the most perfectly worked thunderstone ever discovered.
Is a thunderstone?
Good question. I have heard of a thunderstone, like here or there, but like I didn't know truly what it was. Thunderstone rocks are based in deep folklore, repeatedly sent from the gods and transported to Earth during lightning storms. Thunderstones are thought to bring good fortune, prosperity, and progress to the finders. Thunderstones are often used as pendants and were perceived to have really protective powers, and they're often used as talismans for both cattle and pregnant women. In other parts of the world, they were worshipped as family gods who kept the spells and witchcraft away.
Ancient astronaut theorists.
Yeah,
say
exactly.
yes.
I'm going with that theory.
Yeah, hey, theories are theories. I can't rule them all. I did Google some supposed thunderstones just to see, like, what did they look like? It would be the biggest stretch in all to be like, that is this. They're the same thing. Thunderstones have no etches on them at all. They're like black sharded rocks. And if I had to take a guess, they said that, like, in theory, folklore says the rock is brought from the gods to Earth by lightning. Maybe it's more likely a rock got hit by lightning and created a shard. And
or a meteor, right?
Guess. Or a meteor, yeah, or something like that. But that is a theory that's out there. Another interesting theory that's been suggested is that the Mystery Stone is a lodestone. Lodestones are naturally magnetized pieces of mineral magnetite. These are naturally occurring magnets that are extremely rare. Pieces of lodestone were used as the first magnetic compasses, and these were actually extremely important to early navigation. So lodestone potentially out there. I did try to do some searching to be like, all right, what did lodestones actually look like? Again, nothing I found looked anything remotely like this. These look like natural minerals from the earth in kind of ways. And
well, I could kind of see that because, A, it's the oval shape. So if it's supposed to turn due north, the oval shape would allow it to do that and to point in the right direction. The other thing is it's not a native stone. It's not from around here. So it suggests somebody traveled to get here and they would need a compass.
Yeah. Interesting, right? And again, I'm not a scientist or geologist. None of my research showed any archaeologist, geologist saying, yep, lodestone, this has like some type of magnetic property. I found nothing suggesting.
Can we ask the museum if we can see if it's magnetized?
Yeah, I think it's in glass, but you know.
I'm just going to hold a piece of metal over it.
Do not break the egg, Chris. All right. Other far-fetched ideas, because of its out-of-place and one-of-a-kind nature, range from a message about the impending world apocalypse and aliens. Yeah, aliens definitely popped up several times. So with that, we have the possibility that it could also be a hoax. Although it cannot be ruled out, the New Hampshire Historical Society and Meredith Historical Society both point out that Seneca A. Ladd never profited off the artifact. In fact, he supposedly gathered very little fame for his association with it. Thus, the motivation for a hoax remains extremely unclear as to like why would he want to put this hoax on. With that, can I walk you through a potential theory?
Yeah, I would love to hear one.
Before I share the theory, I want to comment on Seneca A. Ladd's character. I spent a lot of time researching this, and damn it, it's fucking bulletproof. His character is fucking bulletproof, okay? I couldn't find a single letter, article, statement saying anything that held Seneca A. Ladd in anything less than the highest esteem. I even want to read a couple examples from the Merrimack and Belknap counties publication from 1885. Here is one. When a boy, he joined a church, but left it as soon as he found out that it was obligatory for him to take a wine at communion. Since then, he has been no member of no church, but contributes to supports many people. He has never used tobacco or alcohol in any form and has battled strongly against the rum traffic.
He doesn't like rum.
Doesn't like that. You got some beef with that guy.
Yeah, I
do. Yeah. So again, this dude doesn't even drink or smoke in the 1800s. We already kind of commented on this earlier, but like this is wild. Aside from just being a party buzzkill, I think this speaks a lot to his character that he's like always looking to do the right thing. And I think that just speaks a lot to him. The book continues on his character with a quote, "Mr. Ladd was always giving me something, doing me some favors, speaking kind words to me, encouraging me, giving me to understand that my chances in the world were just as good as anybody's, providing I kept at school and did right." Later, the interview continued, "I hold Mr. Ladd in grateful remembrance and never think of him but to honor him or hear his name mentioned, but to recall instantly his generosity he shared towards me." So this man was apparently not just an entrepreneur, not just a collector, a philanthropist, a shaker and mover of New Hampshire and the town of Meredith. He was a person who seemingly connected deeply with human beings and was able to win them over. There were plenty of articles stating that he was highly intelligent, motivated, an overall good person. And again, before I go into my thing, I just want to say he never profited off the Mystery Stone. He didn't make a single dollar off this. And these are all reasons why a hoax initially off the bat seemed very far-fetched, right? Like, this is a man of great character. It feels wrong for me, who's just been researching this for 3 weeks, to all of a sudden come in and be like, no, I got evidence this is an elaborate hoax, okay? But I also want to do my research justice. And for that, I want to start talking through some of the connections that I think that might suggest it could be. Recapping a little bit of what we covered today. We know Seneca spent the formative years of his life in Meredith. He opened up several businesses. He was actually married twice. He owned 2 separate houses. He had his children in Meredith. He was a key mover and shaker and developer of the community. He was a philanthropist who was helping the people in his community, investing in this community. And all signs point to him just being incredibly interested and loving of this particular town and city. His life is here, right? So with all of that, I don't think it's a far stretch to say this fucking man loved Meredith, right? He put everything into making himself and building himself and this community. So with that said, let's re-walk through some of the timeline stuff and put some dates on some things that I think are really interesting. Seneca opened up several businesses and was well known as a salesperson and a person who loved to connect and talk to people. Remember the story about the carriages, how he'd walk around and just go ahead and sell those? He would string these carriages up and go town to town. He even paid for his first house with an agreement to deliver carriages. This is important stuff, right? Great relationship, great salesperson. In 1855, Laconia split from Meredith, splitting its population into 2 townships, Laconia taking half of the population from Meredith with it. In the 1860s, just a couple years later, the Civil War broke out, and Meredith sent 43% of its voting-age men to go fight, during which time the town garnered a ton of debt, trying to help support the families, as well as doing the recruiting to get these people to go off to fight this war. In 1870, Seneca A took over as the head of the Meredith Mechanics Association, or MMA. And remember, this association made up of local businessmen with the goal of investing in growing Meredith and attracting and luring new business into the town. In 1971, 1 year before the Mystery Stone was found, the town of Meredith publicly started talking about its huge debt problem. Now, Seneca's town's in trouble. Potentially, Seneca's legacy is in trouble. If the town of Meredith goes away and no longer exists, who is he, right? What does he have if his legacy's gone? Just decades before the discovery of the egg, I think it was actually in the early 1800s, there was actually a huge discovery of another natural New Hampshire wonder that helped spur troves of tourists to see what spectacle. Any idea what that is?
Man on the Mountain?
The Man on the Mountain. So Seneca was alive right after this was discovered. He might have noted the lore and how a bunch of people started flocking to this natural, what they thought at the time was native artifact, right? And carved into the mountaintop. He could have seen this. He could have observed this very thing and how it attracted people. So with his community in trouble, a community he loved, a community he helped build, could Seneca A have looked to a Native American artifact to help drive people into his community? If only there was something like the old Man on the Mountain in Meredith. Again, this is all speculation, but I think we could see how it's not a stretch to get there, right? After all, if Seneca could just get people to visit his town, to see the possibilities that Meredith had, he's the salesperson. He just needs to get them there. He then can say, look at this beautiful town. Look at this brand new water power we just built. The stone is in his freaking bank. In order to see the stone, they got to go right to him. They've got to talk to him. He's a salesperson. He's in charge of bringing prosperity. I started connecting these dots and I was just like, I don't know. Like maybe he didn't need to directly financially benefit from charging people to see the egg. But he was
benefiting from it.
But this potentially could have brought some benefit. In fact, just 4 years after the discovery, in 1976, Seneca A is credited for recruiting Sam Hudson into the town where he opened up a large hosiery business and it ended up becoming the largest employer in Meredith history, a move that ended up bringing prosperity back into the town just 4 years later. Now, there's one more thing I found interesting that I think might add a little more credibility to this theory I'm suggesting. Remember earlier, way back, I said Daniel J. Tapley, the guy who just happened to be in Meredith within 2 weeks of the discovery of the Mystery Stone, and he's the one who wrote the article that I was kind of referring to in the beginning. I want to read you some of the excerpts about how he came upon the discovery of the stone, as well as how he describes Meredith in one of the first ever publications of the Mystery Stone, okay? So this is a direct quote from Tapley. Having a few days of leisure in the company with my friend J.F. Bly-esque, the visit to the fish breeding establishment of Giselle Robinson in Meredith Village, New Hampshire, hoping to make some pleasant additions to my rather limited knowledge of natural history, to relish the memories of a beautiful scenery about the lake, to breathe again the air of the mountains. After talking to the fishery for a few sentences, Tapley goes on to say, on returning to the village, we inquired for any object of scientific interest which might be worth seeing, and were told at once of a wonderful sculpture stone which had just been found the week before. I don't know, you literally wrote this. And
that is super suspicious.
I went to Meredith to go check a fish hatchery, and then it was just like, yo, you got any cool shit?
Is he writing a brochure for Meredith, or is he doing a scientific paper?
Right? It's so strange, right? It's so strange. I want to continue on a little more about Tapley. He just admitted that he had limited knowledge of natural history. He was taking this random trip with a friend to a fish hatchery within a week after this remarkable discovery. Tapley then publishes this article within days to the American Naturalist and starts spreading the word about the discovery, Tapley also starts giving lectures about the artifacts to help spread the word. What a lucky set of circumstances, huh? Like really, really interesting. However, the New Hampshire Historical Society also claims that Tapley's brother lived in Meredith and that he and Seneca Lab were in at least one club together. So now we have a direct tie.
Yep.
Way too many connections.
Right?
My
Right?
brother was there, but I was checking out a fish hatchery.
But they're
Yeah.
not visiting my brother.
Yeah. If his brother told him of the discovery and that is what prompted his journey, I suppose there's nothing malicious behind that. However, looking at it a little deeper, the American Naturalist article, there is some really interesting descriptions of Meredith, especially for something going out to tell the tale of a brand new artifact that was just found. When describing where the Mystery Stone was found, in just the 4th paragraph of the article, Tapley writes, "The location is at the point where Lake Waukegan, Measley Pond, originally emptied into Lake Winnipesaukee, and was no doubt the favored fishing ground for the primitive tribes that formerly inhabited the region. The water has been diverted from this channel and now flows into the canal, furnishing the remarkable water power of 40 feet perpendicular fall, which carries on the hosiery and other manufactories here." That is literally him selling the town of Meredith. Like,
Yes.
where's the artifact? Why are we talking about this?
Yes.
Like, I don't know. That is just like such a red flag to me, right? Like, that's weird for the 4th paragraph of this huge discovery. Maybe he's laying context for the town, right? Like, I just told you a story and I started with a ton of back history.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know, it's all
I mean,
suspicious.
in the 1800s, is that like the writing style for a scientific paper?
Maybe.
It's more flowery and polite.
It could have been. I mean,
I don't know. If anything, I would feel like back in the 1800s, it would be the opposite, right? Like, I feel like it would be very
Direct.
factual and dry.
I
And
don't know.
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But hey, maybe it's just a fucking remarkable canal. Chris, you said you've seen it. Is it a remarkable canal?
It's a canal.
Yeah.
I'll continue going. Admittedly, this is all some extremely loose speculation, but could Seneca, Ladd, and Tapley work together to help get the word out about the Mystery Stone? Could Tapley have added the notes about the canal and the manufacturing business as like an inception level marketing scheme to the readers and people hearing his lectures? We'll probably never know. However, I think we can see that this hoax could make sense. Even if Seneca never charged a single person to see the stone, I'd argue, being such a good salesman and businessman, all he needed was to drive some traffic to Meredith and he could do the rest of the work.
I agree.
And if even 152 years later, I'm writing about the mystery of this peculiar stone, it has no doubt caught the attention of myself and the imaginations and minds of the world. So that's it. That's what I have here for us here today. What are y'all thinking?
Fascinating story, very well told. Lots of detail. Thank you for that. A couple of things that keep coming to mind. It's if it was a hoax, this guy is putting his entire reputation on the line on the chance that this stone will drive business to the town. And I really liked your theory, and you connected a lot of dots. But this guy, it seems like his character was very important to him.
Yeah, I agree.
So for him to take that chance would be a huge... The other thing that really throws me off is you have archaeologists who have investigated this and examined the stone. If this was some amateur archaeologist from the 1800s, they say, oh, this is a fake. But they can't prove it as a fake, which really stands out to me as well.
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards hoax.
Yeah.
But the fact that they can't prove it's a hoax definitively is really interesting to me as well.
Yeah.
Seneca loved his town. The town became his family. After everything that he'd gone through, his character was never put into question because of who he was. So even if someone from the outside came in, the entire town would still support him. No one's going to go against him. And I think he loved the town so much that maybe in a way he convinced himself that doing something wrong for the right reason was justification. Like, he was okay with that. I don't know. I'm going with hoax, and I'm doing it because he loved his town.
I think it's interesting because it's like answers that no one may ever get to the bottom of, right?
Yeah.
It's all pure speculation. I think there is a lot, especially the micro and macro analysis of the stone itself, I think is really compelling.
Yeah.
You're like, this is made on a lathe from a stone, not from here. These etchings were made after the stone itself was shaped. I don't know. I think that already leads a lot to it being potentially a hoax.
Yeah.
And then once you start linking the rest of the story together, it's just like, whoa, I can really see why this made a lot of sense. And it could have worked. That could have been one of the main reasons that, businesses started coming back to Meredith. Once I found out that the Man in the Mountain was discovered like 30, 40 years right before this, and he probably was able to literally watch people be attracted and bring people into the state to see this, That to me was like he's seen it happen before.
Yeah.
He now has a path to
Yes.
figure out that's all I need to do.
And he's smart enough to do that.
Yeah. And then him being the salesperson, as we said,
Yeah.
they just need to come. He can do the work.
Well, Seneca, as an amateur archaeologist and a historian buff, very, very clearly, based on the story you've told us, it's interesting that he would mistake a teepee for a wigwam. He wouldn't be more accurate to the native tribes from that area.
Oh, you mean like if he etched it?
If
drew
he
a
was the one who
teepee.
etched it,
Yeah.
I think he'd be a little bit more accurate.
Unless what makes it more mysterious? Maybe he did it on purpose.
Well, maybe we'll have some more answers in a couple days once we get to the New Hampshire Historical Society in Concord, New Hampshire, where they currently have the Mystery Stone on display. Maybe seeing it will bring it to life in a way that I'm currently not able to appreciate or acknowledge, and I'm super stoked to see that.
That's going to wrap up the episode on the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone. Your next steps, go to Instagram at Weirder After Dark, and there we're going to post some images of the Mystery Stone. We want you to tell us what you think it is. Was this a lodestone, a thunderstone, a lost artifact made by Native Americans, or was this a hoax perpetrated by Seneca A lad to save the city that he loved? You tell us. Also, quick reminder, we are going to be doing some upcoming episodes on listener tales. So if you've had anything spooky happen to you, if you've had anything strange in New England going on, whether that's supernatural, UFOs, ghosts, if you saw a puckwudgie, whatever it may or may not be, we want to hear those stories. So send them to TheGang at weirderafterdark.com. We're going to comb through those stories, and we're going to be releasing some upcoming episodes sharing your tales. We cannot wait to hear them. And with that, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for being a listener of ours. If you could, share this pod, send it to everyone you know, send it to everyone you love. You are awesome. We are awesome. We want to continue moving this podcast forward. And with that, as always, it gets a little weirder after dark.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.